Hey everyone and welcome. Let's cut the small talk and dive straight in. Tired of huge, super expensive MRIs that make sick people rush to hospitals? Good news. A Chinese team cracked the funhouse mirror physics problem that stumped experts for decades. Their portable MRI is cheap, fast, and cuts image distortion by 80%. 66% of people worldwide couldn't get an MRI before, but this wheel-around device goes to ICUs, rural clinics, even emergency scenes. It won the top global award, beating Stanford/Harvard, and will hit markets soon. Healthcare's big revolution is coming. When will it reach you?
Today, we're talking about a piece of technology that could completely rewrite the rules for emergency medicine, for healthcare in rural areas, really for diagnostics as we know them. It's a breakthrough that takes one of the most powerful tools in medicine and finally puts it exactly where it's needed most.
I mean, just stop and think about that for a second. Instead of this frantic race to get a critically ill patient through a hospital to some massive, stationary machine, what if the machine could just come to them, right there in the ICU or in a small-town clinic, maybe even at an emergency scene? This isn't science fiction anymore.
You know, the gap between what we have now and what we desperately need is just enormous. On one side, you've got the traditional MRI, this multi-ton, multi-million-dollar beast that's locked away in a specially shielded room. And on the other side, there's the dream, a portable, affordable device you can just wheel right up to a patient. For decades, bridging that gap, it honestly seemed impossible.
So, to really get why this breakthrough is such a game changer, we first have to understand the scale of the problem. And this is about so much more than just convenience. We're talking about a full-blown global accessibility crisis.
Just look at that number, 66%. Let that sink in for a moment. 2/3 of all the people on this planet cannot get an MRI scan, even when they need one. That isn't some small gap in coverage. It's a massive blind spot in global healthcare. But what does a number like that actually mean for real people?
Well, it looks like this. It's a stroke patient losing precious brain cells for every single minute they spend being wheeled down hallways to get to the machine. It's an entire community in a rural area that's hundreds of miles away from the nearest diagnostic center. It's a patient in the ICU who is just too sick, too unstable to be moved at all. The crazy high cost and complexity of MRIs have basically built this huge wall that keeps life-saving tech away from the very people who need it most.
Which, it begs the question, if the need is so huge, why hasn't somebody done this before? Well, it turns out there's this really fundamental problem, a physics problem, that stood in the way. A challenge so big it made portable MRIs feel like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
And it all comes down to this mouthful of a term, magnetic field inhomogeneity. The best way to think about it is like a funhouse mirror. A perfect, uniform magnetic field gives you a perfectly clear image. But the smaller, low-power magnets you'd need for a portable device, they create a totally warped, distorted field. And we're not talking about a little bit of fuzziness. The distortion is hundreds, sometimes thousands of times worse than in a big hospital machine.
So, what happens when you try to diagnose a patient using what is essentially a funhouse mirror? The research was pretty blunt. The images had such, and I'm quoting here, severe geometric distortion and artifacts that they were fundamentally unable to meet the needs of clinical diagnosis. In other words, they were totally, completely useless to a doctor.
So the result was a dead end. The entire field of portable MRI was stalled, stuck in research labs, because it just couldn't produce an image a doctor could actually use to save a life. That is, until a researcher named Q Key decided to just throw out the old methods and try something brand new. Now, the solution wasn't some single eureka moment. Nope, it was a super methodical 3-year journey to systematically take apart that impossible physics problem piece by piece. And the process was incredibly meticulous. First came the theory. The team completely abandoned the traditional way of imaging, which captures data line by line, kind of like an old TV. Instead, they used a new approach called spatio-temporal encoding, or SPEN. Think of it more like capturing the whole picture all at once, instead of drawing it pixel by pixel. They ran over 1,000 simulations to get the math just right. Then they moved to iteration. They built a prototype that could do a full 3D brain scan in just 3 minutes. And finally, adaptation, proving it actually worked in the real world with real pediatric patients.
And the results? I mean, just look at this table. They were staggering. This wasn't just a little improvement, it was a total revolution. Compared to the old method, image distortion, that core funhouse mirror problem, was slashed by 80%. The scan itself was 50% faster. And this part is absolutely crucial. it worked with simpler hardware, which is key to making these things affordable. It literally transformed the technology from clinically useless to highly viable.
Now, when you make an achievement this big, it does not go unnoticed. The international scientific community definitely took note, and it all led to this huge moment of recognition for some truly paradigm-shifting work.
So in May of 2025, this research won the Prince Meany Award. This is basically the top honor in the entire field. And get this, it was the first time ever that a research team from China had won it, beating out huge competitors from places like Stanford and Harvard.
The award committee's praise really said it all. They explained exactly why this work was so important. They said this technology, and this is their word, redefines what is even possible with a low-field portable MRI. And just to be clear, this award is a really big deal. It's not just some academic prize. It's specifically for taking basic science and turning it into something a doctor can actually use in a hospital. The review process is incredibly tough, and for decades it's been dominated by American and European universities. So this win, yeah, it signals a major shift in leadership in this super critical area of medical tech.
Okay, so the code has been cracked. The world has taken notice. But what comes next? Let's take a look at the final steps on this journey, from an award-winning prototype to a life-saving tool that's in hospitals everywhere.
The demand is just immense. This chart gives you a pretty good idea. I mean, look at the need just in rural clinics. Over 30,000 in China alone that don't have this kind of equipment. Then you've got the emergency rooms, where every single second counts for stroke patients. And of course, special situations like medicine in remote areas or even on the sports field. The potential here to save lives is just almost limitless.
But, okay, there are still some challenges to sort out. Technologically, the prototype still weighs several hundred kilograms. It's got to get lighter to be truly portable. From a market perspective, it has to prove it's cost-effective for smaller hospitals with tight budgets. And on the industrial side, to really get that price down, there's a need to rely less on expensive imported parts.
The roadmap forward, though, is pretty clear. With the tech validated this year, the market is expected to start picking up. We're projecting that large-scale production could start within the next 3 to 5 years. And the ultimate goal, after 2030, is to get the cost down to just 1/4 of a traditional MRI machine. Now that is what true accessibility looks like.
Ultimately, this whole thing isn't a question of if anymore. It's really a question of when. This technology promises to just erase the boundaries in healthcare, bringing one of medicine's most powerful tools to places it has never, ever been able to reach before. Which leaves all of us with one final thought. How soon will this revolution in diagnostics reach your community?